Welcome to the Answers for Elders radio show. Meet the trusted experts who will give you straight answers and will help guide you on the path of later life care. Now, here's your host, founder, caregiver, and CEO, Suzanne Newman.
And welcome back, everyone, to Answers for Elders Radio Network. And we're here on the 8 foundational principles of wellness, and we're number 6. Is that correct?
I think believe we're number 6. Yeah.
Or we don't know. No, this is number 7.
Number 7.
Number 7. See, I lose count. And in our last segment, Elena let us know we're going to talk about intellectual wellness, which is knowledge, it's learning, it's growing. So fill me in a little bit about how you guys honor that.
Absolutely. So you mentioned a few things. It's knowledge, it's learning and growing. Mm-hmm. There's also challenging beliefs. So you said earlier, Suzanne, that this is a fairly large community. We have 145 apartment homes here, and I do call them homes because they're our resident homes. And we have at least 165 characters, right?
Sure.
And everyone has a different. Everyone's different.
Infinite personalities, as we talked about.
Absolutely. And so some of that is, getting together in group settings, talking about political or, financial issues that are going on in our world. So critical thinking. Being able to use our minds and think critically on different topics. In fact, that's actually one of the things that we offer here on site at our communities and several others it's part of that intellectual wellness. Mm-hmm. It's critical thought. Yeah. What does that critical thought look like? And so we take current events and we read our current events and we have discussions on that. So, I miss going to school. Sometimes I miss my college university years and not necessarily the test, but I miss it because we were in platforms where we can talk to each other about critical issues that were going on in our world, respectfully, going back to our core values and respectfully with love, but still be able to think and use our minds to think on,
which is so important.
Absolutely.
Especially in our aging years.
Correct.
When we tend, our world gets smaller, especially for seniors that have been isolated through the pandemic, or they live at home still to this day, and so they don't have the social interactions. They don't have the ability to exercise that mind part. And, that's how depression sets in. That's how loneliness sets in. There's all kinds of mental health issues that result without that intellectual, being used, that intellectual part of so your goal obviously is to keep minds active.
Keep minds active from critical, doing critical topics or critical events. We also do book clubs, or those are some of my favorites. The book clubs where we do a book review, talk about the books, have some some tea and tea sandwiches and again, it's in a group setting, so it touches on different areas of wellness, from social, the intellectual, of course, going back to occupational and emotional. So it triggers a lot of different things, but more importantly, you've heard the age-old saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. So we talk about, some of our communities do have and the ability to do memory care. So Silver Lake at this time, we don't have an exclusive memory care neighborhood. That being said, we do emphasize intellectual wellness so that we're exercising our brain.
Well, and
exercising
there's
that muscle.
Different declines of the brain, and so there's a lot of seniors that live independently, but they still have some sense of memory issues.
Right.
And so understanding that to keep those, them as active as possible and keep them, their brains working. And part of that, I think it just goes without saying, we haven't really talked about it, except we did talk about healthcare earlier, but even being current on medications, making sure that there isn't a cognition issue on a particular medication. You have professionals that could potentially recognize things like this, where
Yeah.
the average person, like son or daughter,
Right.
or if they live alone, they may not necessarily recognize that.
Absolutely. We have several different pharmacies that we work with, and PT, OT, doctors that we have great relationships with, and we thank God for them as well, to allow us to really encompass, to understand what's going on with our
Sure.
residents. But again, with the socialization that we provide, the activities that we provide, TED Talks. Again, we talked about movie nights, but all that goes into that intellectual wellness as well, because we want to keep our residents thinking. We want to keep their brains active. The brain is a muscle. I think we forget that. I forget that. Puzzles, working together with puzzles. Yesterday we were doing a word search, in a group like setting. And so it allows our residents to, again, participate and have fun with each other at the same time. We have a group. I stay here on site at the community, as you all know, as you heard from the last radio shows. So I stay here at the community. I come down at 7 o'clock, and we have a group of residents playing pinochle.
I'm not even up at 7 o'clock.
Oh my gosh. Well, and so, there's a beautiful group of,
so much for my intellectual wellness.
Well, and so at 7 o'clock at night, I had 2 big tables, and they were playing pinochle and bridge. And they're using their brains. They're doing all their, I don't like bridge because it's for me, it's too mentally strenuous. But they have their notes and they're taking exactly. They're calculating who's winning. It's truly amazing. But again, that's exercising the brain. That's staying active. The synapses are working. They're critically thinking. And again, it has been proven to slow down the process of memory loss and Alzheimer's.
And just the social stimulation of conversation is so valuable in understanding that. And if you're thinking about, I have so many families come to me and say, well, mom and dad are fine, or mom's fine. She lives by herself. Well, she doesn't get out much. She doesn't drive. She doesn't do, those are, to me, I get red flags on that, because I know there's a lot of isolation. And this society is changed. The world has changed. We don't necessarily have this, this ability now to be able to just, have family around us all the time. People live in other parts of the country. So we don't have the regular relationships anymore. And to be in a community where there are types of activities, it really promotes a better quality of life. And I think part of that quality of life is so important, is that mental, intellectual development and use of that brain. Development is key to, you just said some of the key words that I feel are instrumental in intellectual wellness. It's challenging, right? So I do, I was just recently talking to a family that's looking to make a move, and he said, I don't want to go to a prison. I feel like I would be going to a prison. And so as we were talking about his current home situation, he's not driving, he's just going from one room to the next. I said, so help me understand, how do you feel that your home is not currently a prison? You're not getting out, you're not doing the things that you used to love to do, you're not around other people. So again, challenging critically to think about his current situation. And I think the fear was, if I go to a community, I'm not going to be able to do these things. Oh, well, no, we
you
talked
are
about that in number one,
right?
About that emotional wellness, where you made it number one, because it's that core root of how I feel about things. And sometimes, we do a challenge between how I feel and what I think all the time.
That's it. That's it. We buy on emotion sometimes, and emotionally, there's a trigger, and then we justify it with logic later. And if you justify it with that logic later, making a move to a senior community makes sense, because the logic is there. So this gentleman followed his logic to say, no, I'm living in a prison right now. I'm not going to lose my freedoms. I'm not going to lose my sense of purpose. I'm not going to lose it. It's in fact I'm going to be able to attain that, get more of it. And emotionally, we had to walk through the emotional part of making a move and making a major decision. But again, when you justify with the logic, doesn't make sense. And I think that's what we do here on a daily basis, to offer that part of wellness to our residents, but also with our family members too. You know, we have a lot of support groups that we offer for our families, and I think that's great because intellectually they have to justify certain decisions for themselves too.
Yeah, I walked in to your community a couple of weeks ago, and you were doing a talk. And I don't remember what it was about. I think it was the history of MorningStar.
That's correct. Yeah.
And, you know, but it was good to learn about this organization that, you know, that has acquired this community, and to really understand, you know, the foundational parts. And I think for you to stand up and share that, people were very engaged because you are part of that.
Right.
And you're part of, and you're building that history, and it makes them feel part of it.
Right. I also have a lot of mouth. I think that helps. But yeah, we had over 35 residents down for that particular talk. And you know, we were talking about Ken Yeager, who is our owner of MorningStar, and you know, where he came from. You know, he grew up on a farm, and you know, he grew up in poverty, and he's just this incredible human being.
Sure.
But you know, he was raised with 11 other siblings, and so just to hear his legacy, his purpose, being able to provide that intellectual insight to what truly makes MorningStar was incredible.
Yes. You know, I love this. And Elena, I know that we've got one last foundational principle coming up. And when is that? We're going to talk about.
So we're going to talk about physical wellness.
Physical
wellness. You know what, Suzanne? I want to get physical.
You know what? Physical is really, really important. And certainly, you know, I think that there's a lot of things we have to talk about. On that episode. And for those of you, again, that are listening to this podcast, yes, we are at MorningStar Senior Living in Silver Lake, Everett, Washington. But you guys have how many communities across the country?
So we currently have 34, but we are growing.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, we're actively building, and so we're pretty.
You just opened in Kirkland, Washington.
Washington.
You're about to open in Hillsboro,
Oregon. We have 2 in San Jose that are under construction right now. Laurelhurst is under construction, looking to open this year as well.
And then Houston.
We have Houston, Texas as well. That's open. We're opening several others in Colorado as well, where we got our beginnings and where we got our start. So
I love
actively growing, and it's been great. And
well, and we're going to talk about getting physical right after this.
We at Answers for Elders thank you for listening. Did you know that you can discover hundreds of podcasts in our library on senior care? So visit our website and discover our decision guides that will help you also navigate decision making. Find us at answersforelders.com.